I'm a Salesforce consultant, and my name is Shruti MN, and I have started this career in Salesforce as a consultant from past 5 years, and it is my sixth year where I'm running into integration and other fields of existence. With when it comes to my uh, experience, I've worked in companies where I have been quoted as a very good trainer or coach, where I have placed myself under the name of a coach in my training center, that is Codeforce One. So this session is about Apex triggers, and I would want everybody to open your Salesforce org and be prepared for the hands-on session. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, Shruti.
I'm presenting my screen. Yeah. So today's topic is Apex triggers. When it comes to Apex triggers, we have uh, the code which has to execute, and it should occur in a place where we can insert, update, delete, or undelete. These are the four DML operations that we have. And when it comes to triggers, we can place ourselves as the experienced developer or consultant by automating the logic according to the system and their updates. So when it comes to the use case of triggers, we have a particular lead which has to get converted. But when it comes to the client or the person who is handling the record, he cannot move the process according to the availability of the lead status, because of one reason, that lead is converted but it is not under process. Meaning to say, lead should be converted according to a process and it should go according to the order of execution. So when to use triggers? We can use triggers to enforce complex business rules, like whenever we want to insert, update, delete, or undelete an operation, that is the DML operation. So then we get into the place where we can afford to be part of the events, but it cannot work accordingly because of one reason. The DML operation is under the category where we can earn. Second, to perform operations across related objects. So when we speak about related objects, we have operations across the objects, and we need to perform the operations accordingly. So I'll show you a glimpse of how to get the records when we have. I hope my screen is visible. Okay. So now I will. So if we have a record, we have date as the field, and then second we have the email address. Email. So here when we write email, when we try to combine these two fields and we make it visible in an object, for example, lead, the order of execution should be according to what we create. That means these two fields should combine and give an output in the lead, where these two should combine with the mandatory fields. Okay, that is by uh, by acknowledging the fact that it is a standard field and it is system generated because of one reason. When we purchase the org, we know that the licenses balance both the uh, aspects of the field. But when we combine it and when we write it, we either insert it or we update it. Okay, updated. But if you want to follow the other order of execution, or if we want to make it clear to the client, we can use the other DML operations, that is delete and delete. So now when it comes to what we say, what we call it as context variables, and which is available in triggers, it is before insert, okay, insert, or after insert, okay, after insert. So what happens is, if we try to include anything, it will have before or after. Before or after context, after update. That means before the order of execution start, it will start executing the operations. Or after insert, where we uh, place it as a insertion to the record. Then we have update. That is before update or after update. That means if we update it before, then it goes according to the uh, order of execution, and then after the system updates the record, and then it runs as a read only, there after update falls into picture. For example, when we convert lead into opportunity and we want it to be as an automation through triggers, then we use these two. But when we use delete operation, again, delete will be before or after. So before we delete or after we delete. So when it comes to after, it is read only. When it comes to before, performing any insertion or updation or deletion, that is the DML operation, we have to make sure that the records are editable in a form that after we update, the updates are made in the system and it reflects according to the object that we perform. So it should be clear that when we write the operations, it should be according to the object. So before comes in place only when we have the trigger on the same object, and after comes after we perform the activities, that is after we perform it on another object. Okay, we should be clear on this part. Then we have undelete. So in undelete, we have only after because it's read only, and once we try to perform the delete operation as undelete, it goes to the recycle bin and we want it back. So it is only after undelete. Okay. So that is one context where we place it in the recycle bin. We try to get it back only because of one reason: the client wants the old records to be retrieved. Okay, so I hope I'm clear till this point. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the other benefits of. Note down your points at the end of the session. You can ask. Okay. So we have other benefit of using triggers. That is when we have workflow rules and process builders, and they are insufficient. Okay, so that time we use triggers because of one reason: we have the workflow rules in place, but the process builders comes into picture when the rules are placed according to the client's requirement when it comes to the processing. That means we place in the criteria and then they come into place with our uh, suggestions when we want the workflow rules or the process builder to be automated. There are cases like creating an order where we can't use the workflow because of the uh, order price object or any other object where we have a link between the two objects, be it master detail or lookup. But when it comes to junction object, triggers play an important role. Okay. Next is to execute logic before saving or after committing data. So I'll present my screen and I'll explain about this. After you commit the data, you have to you have to write one topic, that is order of execution when it comes to triggers. Okay, so after we finish the execution, the triggers place themselves in a category, that is the category which comes into place with the order of execution. For example, it is lead, and then it goes into the next object, that is after we commit. The lead wants to make changes in itself and a custom object. The custom object will be the result of the execution. Uh, okay, so when we connect this data with this, we realize that the trigger has no place in the lead or the custom object because of one reason: we have governor limits. Okay, so when we try to execute anything in the log, that is what we get as a result, we can place anything in the object only if it is a standard or an S object. S object comes into picture when we have an object and it can be placed according to the governor limits. S object. Okay. So the custom field is the S object when it comes to lead and its creation. But when it comes into uh, theory where the reality is shown, that governor limits places itself only when the trigger is a before in when the trigger has an operation that is before insert. Okay, I hope I'm clear till here. Okay, so keep in mind that everything comes under either we commit before or after saving. So if it's before saving, we have certain DML operation. If it's after saving, we have certain DML operation. But one common DML operation is update, where both can be done according to the law or the order of execution. Okay. So the syntax of this is, I'll share my screen with another window. Okay. So here, if you see, when we write a trigger, Okay, the syntax of trigger is for example, we're converting the lead. And then you have to write the context variable. Okay. And then it will be placed in between the braces. Understood? So this is the syntax for creation of any trigger in the debug console. And if you want anything to be written, it should be between these two braces. Okay. Now I'll start the hands-on session with two examples, and I'll send the deck to you. And one more thing, when we write I'll explain this. One more specification, that is, we have to mention the right object, because if we mention the wrong object, the triggers hit the governor limit and the uh, uh, place where all the records are getting updated, and it becomes a serious issue when it comes to the client. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let me move ahead with the examples. Now I'm going to quote an example where we have to automatically set a lead source if it is missing as a default value. Okay, so, and I'll send the deck after the session. Okay, of whatever I've explained. So it is on lead. Okay, so it is I'm changing the name so that you know, in case they in the deck it's different and what I'm displaying here is different. The reason is when the client asks you, it goes according to the client. So let's keep it simple. Okay. Okay. So it's before insert. So when we start the code, we should keep in mind that in case we are adding the uh, line that is list of objects, then we have to place the same object, because we are using before insert option. Okay. So here first you have to create a list. So that is list lead. Okay. Lead list equal to list new list lead. New list lead. Okay. After this, we have to write a for loop. For loop is used when we want to write about an object and we place the name of the variable, that is the uh, context variable, as L. That means any field that we want to conquer should be part of this list. So we place the new list here. This loop is called as for each loop, where the insertion happens only if we have a condition. So we place the if condition here, where we have to place the lead list as is empty, but what is the condition? We have to place the list as filled. So when we fill the list, then we can use this. Okay. So if it is not empty, then L dot lead source should be equal to web. Okay. Meaning to say, whenever there's a new lead, we have to update it as lead source. But how can we update this? So there should be a DML operation which helps us to add this list into the frame. So insert lead list here, because when we write the lead list as a context, then we can update it. But here we shouldn't write this insert operation, because when it comes to before insert, okay, by explaining even the errors so that you note down the errors as well, which you might make. We have to just update the records. In before insert, we shouldn't use the DML operations because of one reason. It gets committed before we uh, write the list. So this should work according to the law, which is the uh, uh, updates which we make. So when we conquer this thought that the DML operations are not performed in before insert, everything falls into place as a array of instance. Okay. So let me save this. But there are many things which we have to perform. Okay. Where I've updated the lead source here, but we have to write it as trigger.new. Okay. So the reason why we have to place it as trigger.new here is, and not the lead list, is when we place it as a context variable, there is one point where we have to conquer. That is, the lead should get converted, but trigger.new is only added when the new list gets framed. Okay. And here we have to make it clear that it is a string dot list. Okay, because when we write any operation, it should be clear to the uh, 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 to the person whom we are explaining, be it the client or anybody, that when the lead source gets updated, it should be converted into a string, and then the output should be placed as an update. Okay, so we use before insert only for one reason. Before insert helps us to narrate the incidences according to the option. Okay, now I hope all of you are following this, and if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I'll give you 2 minutes to complete writing this code. Okay. Okay. So Madhav has asked about the if condition. So if condition comes into place when we want to write that the condition that we want to adhere to is in place with the condition that we have executed. I've written is empty as part of this code because the string or the list shouldn't should be empty. But I've put this notation where the condition will match if it is not empty. So then we have to update it as a lead source with that as the value. So if condition works into place, works only if we place the condition according to the for loop. Okay, so here it is trigger dot new. So if it's a new list, then it shouldn't be empty and it should come into place with the string that is the lead list, and then it should get updated. Okay. So it is blank, which you have to use here. Okay. And is blank will have a method. Wait 1 second. Write it again. Ah, it's blank. And here I had written SMT so that you come up with a question. Why have I written SMT when there is blank? Okay. So when this is blank, we have to place it as L dot lead source. Okay. The reason is when we type it as blank, is empty comes into picture when we want the entire condition to work according to a set that is the lead. Okay. Set means I mean to say the set of records or the set of variables, okay, which will come into picture. But when we write it as is blank, that means the lead source should be blank, and then we update it as that only if the string gets converted by using trigger.new. Okay. So good that Madhav asked the question. Now it's clear, right? For everybody. Okay. So now I'll execute this code. So now it's very easy. Either we use the debug uh, log, or we create a new record and we execute it. Okay. So creating a new record and executing it is better. But I'll teach you in the debug log if you want, which is better for you. You want to learn about executing in the anonymous window or directly another way, which is easier. I'll teach you in this by inserting the record. Okay, that is the easier way where we can, that is the most convenient method where we can come to again, we can execute the logs accordingly, and it saves time. Okay, so you have to open your or where you have the object. Okay, that is your app. Okay, and we have to select new and write a name. For example, write a name, then their last name, and then the company, because these are mandatory fields. Okay. Mhm. Again, it depends on the client you are uh, focusing on. Now the lead source is empty. Okay, and it's in this status. Now I'll update. I'll save this. Okay. It should get updated as that. No, it's not getting updated. So let's see where we have gone wrong. Okay. Uh, okay. It's blank as lead. Sure. There's an extra. It should be there. So where that where we have the logs. Okay. Mm, mm. So I'll try to debug it in the debug log. Okay. And I'll see. Okay. So when we try to debug in the debug log, first we have to create a uh, object. Okay. And then we have to place it. Okay. We'll start this. So here we have to write. Before this, I'll add a system.debug statement here so that we know why it's not where we have gone wrong. Okay. Where we have made a mistake. Okay, now I'll try to add it here and then I'll try to debug in the window. Okay, let's try it like that. I'm sure the code is right. I'll again refresh this web form. Even so the lead list shouldn't have a list over here because of one reason. We have the lead source and the for loop. When we use a list, okay, which I wanted everybody to confirm, if we use a list, okay, and if we type, then the list should come into picture only if we run it as before insert, because list can't be used when we have is blank. Okay, so the reason the code didn't run is because I had used list as a parameter, but for loop is the main part of the code. Okay, so I made that mistake so that everybody runs the code and comes with an answer. If we had added the lead according to the debug window or the execute anonymous window, we couldn't have found this error. So I urge everybody to use their time and space by debugging the logs by adding it according to the debug window, that is creating a new lead and then placing it as a debug uh, debug error or the mistake in the code. Okay. Okay. Now this should work. Okay. Refresh this. Again. So did you get the place where we went? We made a mistake.
That if condition, I think,
If condition. Okay.
use if not equal to lead source, L dot lead source.
So if so the issues with the if condition.
Either use string is blank or not equal to L
Not
dot.
equal to blank. What's that?
No. I mean remove that not equal to.
Not equal to. So one goes there. Correct. Correct. So if it is not equal to that time, okay. So the mistake is I was thinking if it's not equal to, then we can update it as web, and there's one more line of code which we have to add. That is, if the string is not equal to blank, that is the first line. Then if you make it equal to, then the release source gets updated according to the web. That is the right, correct way to and add this line. So now we can debug this. Okay. Now it's updated. So the reason why the updates work according to the scenarios that we played is when we have the lead source as web, then the lead source can be updated according to the trigger.new, that is the variables. When it comes to the context variables, we call it as collection variables because of one reason. Trigger.new is added to the new list, but when we perform it as a before statement, it goes beyond the condition. Okay. Now I'll teach you about after insert operations, where we have a follow-up task and a new contact should be added, and we have to add it as a follow-up task on the contact. Okay. So this should be written in after insert because of one reason. The follow-up task should be according to the uh, owner of the criteria. That is, if the follow-up task is added, then it is an after insert. So when we have, so it should be written on contact. Why we are writing it on contact is because of a reason that the contact list should be uh, taken into consideration according to the list that we propose. Okay, so list task. List task. So we have task list is equal to new list task. Okay, where once we add the task T equal to new task, and before we write anything, we have to put conditions. Okay, so when we write a new task, okay, what are the conditions which might come into our mind? First is it should be inside the loop, that is the for loop. Second, if we place an if condition, it should be clear that it should be inserted. So the if conditions comes at the last, where we place it according to the new task which we want to place it under. So the new before we start this new task line, I'll remove this line because you'll get confused. You have to put this condition for where we want to write contact, that is contact C is part of the task list, that is using trigger dot new. Okay, and we place the new task, that is the task T, which is equal to new task with the mandatory fields. So mandatory fields for a task are, we have to go through this one. Okay, when it comes to adding the task, I'll go to contacts, and if I add any name, okay, for example, I'll just add a contact. Okay, just add a contact just to show the list, the task list. So when we add a follow-up task, okay, so these are the mandatory field, subject, okay, and the date, that is the activity date which we call in the backend. So in the backend, it has a different name, that is the API. Then we have assign to, which will be my name by default. Then the status. Okay, there's one more field which comes into picture, that is the priority field after we add. Okay, so when we save this, there's one field, there's no subject which we have to add. Okay, here it takes it because of one reason. Why it takes it as as a task without, even though we don't add this as an email or a call, because when we start filling up the uh, follow-up task, it should be clear that there's one more field where we add, that is the priority field. So this saves it from getting an from throwing an error where it will come as no subject. Okay, so but when we code, it should be clear that all the mandatory fields should be filled. So now we know that there's one priority field, that is normal, which is normal or any other option that we want, to high, normal, or less. So keep in mind that these are the fields which we have to conquer first. Okay, that is email. Okay, second, the comma. Second is, which is coming to my picture, which is coming to my head. That is subject is that status, whether it's started or not started. So it is not started. Then we have one more, that is priority, which is either high, low. I'll keep it as normal. Okay. Next, which is very important, who ID. That is where it is getting assigned, or which object it is getting assigned to. If it's contact or lead, it is who ID. Rest of the standard object comes under what ID. Okay. Who ID comes into picture when we want the ID to be placed according to the context. That is, if it is contact. If it is contact, then the who ID will fetch the details related to the task. But when it comes to what ID, it only performs the task which is assigned according to the task, uh, which is the event or other tasks which are displayed here. Okay. When it comes to this task, follow-up task, it is who ID. When it comes to other tasks on contact. Okay. I'll go back. Here we have this, add to logs, or this. That time we use what ID. Okay. But when we add this, we have options. Okay. That we can add it to the uh, uh, other mm, objects as well. But here when we see, if we add it to contacts, okay, for example, is not available here. But in case by default we wanted to add it in the contact which the uh, uh, client asks, then we should be very careful. It comes under what ID, and we can't perform the operation on contact because we are under the same object. And if we try to perform it on the same object, then the what ID doesn't come into place. Okay. Then the next field that we have to take is the activity date. Activity date means the due date which comes into picture. Here I had shown you that is the due date. Mm. It goes according to the date which we create, but I'll edit this. I'll add one more task for you. If this is not showing now. So here we add the due date. So that comes into picture only when the task is assigned according to the due date. So here it is today itself. So the task is completed. So that means we do not want that task to be heard again. So we can mark it accordingly and we can end the task. Here it's not started, but if you want it to be under any other name, we can add it in the code. Okay. The reason the due date is not getting displayed when it comes to the UI here is it is a field which is run on in the backend, and it comes into picture only when the date is in another uh, on another date. Okay. If it's tomorrow. Okay. Then it comes into picture. Okay, so that means it's not under the same due date, but it should be completed or it should be tagged if you don't place it as another. Okay, so here we have to write uh, uh, one fe- uh, one one method, that is today. Okay, today dot add days. Okay, when we write add days today. Okay, this is another method. Okay, today dot add days. Okay, so when we write today dot add days, it comes into picture. It should be today plus 2 days after. Okay, so when we place it as today and 2 days after, the reason why I wrote this bracket is that if we place it as a method, there's one method which comes into picture, which runs in the backend and which places the date as a due date only if add days is 0. Okay, so we shouldn't use that method here. Okay, so that means it will be considered as a new method and it runs. Okay, so here today dot add days, that means today is 6th plus add 2 days, that means it will be taken as 6, and so it goes to 8th. Okay, and after that you remove this and you have to place the braces, and this is done. So this part of the code is completed. Okay, and I'll remove this. Right, and it's complete. Next, we have to think about, we have added the new task. It should be placed um, uh, in the field. Okay, so that means we have to take task list. Okay, into consideration. We have to place it as a condition where it is empty. Okay, is empty. If it's empty. Okay, dot if it's empty. So is empty with the method. Or is blank. Yeah. So when we talk about is blank and or is empty, okay, we take it into consideration only if the task list has been added. Okay. So when the task list get added here in the code, then we place it into consideration. So here we have to write task. So when it comes to adding the task list to D, we have to understand one thing, that the list should be available and visible because of one condition which we know, that is add. And if we add it to the list, it comes into picture that whatever we have added should be taken into consideration as an activity. Okay. So is dot empty. Okay, is dot empty. That means the list is empty. If it's empty, then huh, not is dot empty. Yeah, is empty. Okay. If it's empty, then the list that we consider. Okay. So why am I making mistakes? So that you understand that these are the syntax errors, which these are the mistakes that we make when we have certain variable like is before is after, where we have to not get confused. Okay. So when we place a dot, okay, that means it ends the criteria. Okay, and when we end the criteria, we have to make sure that the criteria matches what we want. So if the task list is empty, that means if there's no task added to the list, then we have to make an insertion. Okay, that is insert the task list. Okay, insert the task list. So now my question to everybody who's part of this meet is, now if I insert the task list, okay, and it is empty, okay, then we made a mistake in the previous code as well, that I had put a not. Okay, so here it is empty, but we want to know if the task list is not empty, then insert the task list, because we are creating a new task. Yeah. So this comes into picture when we add a task and it is not adhered to according to what the client wants. Okay. So here, if you see today's, if you see that any activity that we take it into which we consider as an update, can be taken into consideration only if the activity is correct. Okay, so now there are different ways of handling this activity too. Okay, so one is date dot today. Okay, so I was talking about the method which needs to be added here. That is date dot today, where we add the date to the list that is today. Okay, this is one way where we make a mistake. There is one way where we can add it in the activity date. How? When we add it to the activity date, we have to mention here the number. So if we mention the number here, it will take another data type. But if we want the activity to be performed according to what we want, that is, day activity date should be today only if the inserted task is according to the date that we produce. That means when we add anything, okay, and we place it as a string, then it comes into existence that whatever we place is correct, and it comes into a theory where the refresh page comes into a call, that is, when we refresh the page, the task list will be inserted according to whatever we added in the new task. Okay, so now let us run this code and see if whatever we have performed is right. So immediately when I add a contact, a follow-up task should be created. Okay, so right then. Okay, so now let's see if follow-up task is getting. It's getting. Okay, I hope all of you understood the basics of triggers, and especially this code where a new task had to be added, and the variables which we want others to understand that the variables that we add is just a context or the list, but anything apart from that, we can write it if lead dot who Madhav has typed, if lead dot lead source is equal to double equal to null, and lead dot lead source is equal to not null, that is also one another way that can be taken into consideration. But why am I using methods? So that everybody understands that the methods that we use are according to the huh, according to the law, the code that we write. Okay, so there are best practices which we have to follow. Okay, so I hope you understood both code, both context where I have written about the theory and the practical, which you can refer to, and there are best practices which you have to follow.
Yeah, for the
Huh,
second trigger, uh,
huh,
you write if in the for loop, right?
huh,
Uh, I think we need, I mean, we can use it if condition next to the out of the for loop, so it will get bulkified. It will not be
huh.
elements.
So that can be taken into consideration as well. But we are writing if after the for loop. So that is clear in the code also.
No, no, no. I
So
think
that is what you're trying to tell, huh?
yeah, in the code, it is in the for loop, right?
Hmm.
Can you
That we
open the
can.
code once?
Okay.
I think it's in the for loop.
So that also can be taken into consideration. If we write the if condition in the for loop, outside the for loop, then it can be easily acceptable only if the conditions that we place is according to whatever we have written in the context variable. Okay, that's also correct.
Okay.
Okay. So now when we use the context variable when it comes to the best practices, we use context variable like trigger.new or trigger.old wisely because of one reason we have to place it in the list. Now I'll make it even more easier where you specified about adding the uh, 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 for loop the if statement after the for loop, where we have to make a slight change. We have to just add this bracket here. Hmm. Because I know why he mentioned that. The reason is if we write if inside this for loop, okay, then when it comes to running the code, it will go outside the loop. And I hope you're able to see my screen, no? Where I've placed the code.
Yes,
Yes, no?
yes, you are able to
Okay.
see it.
So no. So if we place it, if it's placed like this, then it is safer when it comes to the governor limits or any other formulae that we write. That means if we place it inside, it is safe for the developers to develop if any other method should be added. Okay. So it goes to the next best practice, that is avoiding SQL or DML statements inside the loop. Okay, so that means if we write it inside the loop, the DML statements comes in the picture only if we write it as a context variable where we have placed it. But if we avoid that, then it can be handled, and if the code is bulkified, that is, if it has multiple records, then it can be placed efficiently. Okay, and we have to consider trigger handlers as a part of the code if we are writing only if we feel that the trigger handler can support the triggers. That means this was a simple code, but if we wanted to write it with the handler, we could have placed it according to the client, and if we place it according to the code that we want, then we can place it as a symbolic movement when it is placed under the context variables, like is before, is after. That means it comes under context variable and methods. That means is empty is used. So if we use is empty, we can place it under the handlers, and then we can run the code, which will take time. It is time consuming, but it comes under the best practice as well. Okay, so it is up to us if we write it inside the trigger or with the handler. But why we want it to be simplified is because of one reason. When we see the governor limit, it will get placed only if we write it in a trigger. Okay, when it comes to that. But if we place it in a handler, it will be safe. But when we write a socket query, handlers are the best way to handle any situation. Okay, next we have test your triggers with unit tests covering bulk and edge cases. That means if we write it with the triggers, it will be placed according to whatever we write. That means if the trigger is within the unit class or if it's covered under the bulk edge bulkified code, the classes which are at the end or the final output that we get or the final outcome that we get or the result will be placed under the test scenarios, and then it will be placed according to whatever we want. Okay, so this ends my session, and we have reached the end of the session where I want to speak about my course and the classes that I conduct. I conduct sessions for both admin and developer, and it depends on your timing as well. Right now, I'm taking classes between 9 to 10, and that's for developer. Admin will continue. There were few students who had enrolled, and they are continuing after a gap. So, if anybody wants to enroll for that, you can enroll. I can give you the details where you can contact me on this number. Okay, I'll type it in the chat window. Okay, so I hope you liked my session, and if you have any doubts, you can contact. Okay, I've typed my number and my email address is. Okay, this is my email address. Okay, so you can contact me at any time, and if you want any knowledge which I have to share on my LinkedIn, you can ask me. I can share it on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much for attending my session, and I'll send you the link of the session. Okay, okay. So I'll send you my LinkedIn URL as well. So kindly follow me on LinkedIn, and if you have any doubts, you can ask me. And after the session, I'll send a feedback form where you can fill. It will take only for it will take only 2 minutes of your time. You can fill in the feedback form, and if you are interested in joining the classes, or if you want to follow my YouTube channel for more updates, you can follow my YouTube channel as well, where I've started my admin series. Okay. So the name of my channel is Codeforce Chronicles, where I'm updating about every session of mine. And if you have any other referrals that you want to send, you can send for my you can send it to my LinkedIn profile, or if you can call and you can contact me on my number. And if everybody is available on the same time, you can start a new batch as well. Okay, I've sent my YouTube channel link in the chat window. I hope you liked my session, and I'm ending the session, and I will send the deck here. Okay, I'll send it to your email address. Wait, that yours is. Can you type in your email address in the chat window?
Sorry, Shruti, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat it
I
once?
want to
What's the
send the
last
deck.
thing?
I want to send the deck of the session, which I have explained along with the code. So I want your email address.
Yeah, thanks Ruti, for the
Okay. Okay.
information.
Okay. I just send it and we'll wind up the session.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And if you want to join the course, you can let me know as well. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, yes, sure.
Okay. Thank you.